distinguished guests and attendees, please take your seats. This year's Tinker and the Primes will begin in just a moment. Welcome to this year's Tinker and the Primes. Please welcome to the stage our MC for today, Senior Master Sergeant Retired, Mr. Jeff James, President of the Air Force and Space Association, Gerrity Chapter.
All righty, good morning and welcome back. A special thank you to the University of Tennessee and the Haslam College of Business for sponsoring this morning's breakfast. As I stated, I am the current president of the Gerrity chapter of the Air and Space Force Association here in Central Oklahoma. Some of you may be asking yourself, what does the Air Force Association or Air and Space Force Association do? Well, we are an organization that is 1 year older than the United States Air Force, right? So we were created to help bring the United Air Force to fruition away from the Army Air Corps. We are primarily made up of 100,000 plus retirees and members around the globe that include retirees, veterans, active duty, Guard, Reserve, civilians, to include our federal, state, and industry partners. We all share a love for all things air, space, and cyber. So what do? Our mission is to promote a dominant United States Air and Space Forces as the foundations of a strong national defense, to honor, support our airmen, guardians, and their families, and to remember and respect an enduring heritage. How do we do that? Well, we have 3 strategic foundational pillars. We educate the public on the critical need for air, space, and cyber power by promoting STEM education in order to maintain a superior professional workforce for our national security. We advocate for air, space, and cyber power to favorably shape policy and resourcing decisions to guarantee the strongest and most lethal force in the world, air and space power. Huh? There we go, get a little excitement, right? We support our airmen, our guardians, and their families of the total air and space force, that includes our active duty, National Guard, Reserve, civilians, family members, members of the Civil Air Patrol. So if you're not an Air and Space Force member, I highly encourage and recommend that you become a member. And FYI, since most of you may be traveling to Midwest City, you have an opportunity to join the Gerrity 215 if that's your choice, rather than a local chapter. But if you do have a local chapter in your area, I highly ask that you look them up and see how you can get involved. Now back to the real reason why many of you are in this room today. So far, we've had a very robust week with lots of good information from lots of excellent speakers. But as you know, we always save the best for last. And since today is a half day, we'll have to give you as much information as possible before you depart. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Colonel Brian Moore, commander of the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex at Tinker Air Force Base. He leads a team of more than 10,000 military and civilian professionals delivering combat power for America. The complex performs program depot maintenance and modifications on KC-46, KC-135, B-1B, B-52, E-3, and Navy E-6 aircraft, as well as maintenance, repair, and overhaul for numerous engines and a wide variety of commodities for the Air Force, the Navy, the Marine Corps, and foreign military sales partners. Colonel Moore previously served as the Director of Staff and Deputy Director of Strategic Plans, Programs, Requirements, and Analysis at Air Force Materiel Command, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. So let's all give a warm welcome to Colonel Moore.
All right, good morning, everybody. Let me get this open without hitting that. And thanks for sticking with us to day 3 of Tinkering the Primes. Probably more importantly, thanks to Jeff James and the AFA for the association and support and advocacy that they provide. Appreciate that introduction. I'd like to quick start. I see, so these lights are bright, as others have said, but I can also see some folks in the audience that make this Tinkering the Primes great. So I know Shayna's here. I just want to add my thanks to Midwest City Chamber, Mayor Dukes. What an incredible Tinkering the Primes. I'll talk more about that in a second. But give them another round of applause if you wouldn't mind. I think part of the reason this event is so important, and I've seen it as I've been walking through the different, the hall and the different displays, and this is an opportunity for us to come together and integrate, see what technology exists, and really find the vision and opportunity to make each other better. So really appreciate this. Let me quick, as we get started on talking about the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex, let me just quick introduce my team so we can connect to some of those opportunities a little bit better. Throughout the 3 days, I've been pushing folks to OB. We've had a room in the left back side over there, but I realized a lot of people don't know how we're organized. So let me just introduce some folks. First, I want to introduce my executive director. I think he's in the front, Wade Laughlin. Stand up, Wade, a second. Our executive director, great. And then our new deputy commander coming from Minot, Jeff Anderson. And then the way we're organized is 4 groups, used to be 5. I'll touch that in a second, but Colonel Eric Quidley coming from OSD is our Commodities Maintenance Group Commander. I don't know if Tim Beck is here. He is our Propulsion Maintenance Group Commander. And then Dan Lockhart is kind of right over there, our Aircraft Maintenance Group Commander as well. We have Brigadier General Select Aaron Hike, who is our IMA reservist here. Thanks, Aaron. And so you kind of get how we're organized. One more critical function that we have is our business operation. So if Jimmy Milton is in the room, I'll have you stand up. There he is right there. This is the man that you need to see. He works with Marcus Storga, and they are doing all the planning and future forecasting to really understand how we can partner together. So please get with Mr. Milton and explore those opportunities and what we're doing. We'll talk about a lot of that. Just a little bit about me. This is my 3rd time back to Tinker. So I'll tell you, it absolutely feels like coming home. I had the privilege early on to serve 2 different tours in the 552nd Air Control Wing on the E3 side, America's wing. Incredible partners, and loved commanding the squadron and the group level there. Had the privilege and opportunity to then come across the ramp in my last year of 6 and work with General Levy and General Kirkland in the Sustainment Center as the vice, not understanding or knowing that it could potentially lead back to this opportunity. But so thankful I did, because I got to understand the Sustainment Federation as you know it today, and it's made all the difference. Just in my first 45 days of command, understanding the team and learning, bringing that context in has been invaluable. After I left, I had the privilege to go see what Robins Air Force Base looked like as the installation commander there, and particularly learned from more great mentors like General John Kubenick and General Jennifer Hammerstead, who you heard brief earlier this week. Fascinating and incredible leadership, and then to see how the Warner Robins ALC operates very much under the Sustainment Center concept, just like Tinker and Hill. So that was a great opportunity. And then most recently, I had the opportunity to go to AFMC and work with General Bunch and General Richardson. So I wasn't in the room yesterday for General Richardson's speech because I had some responsibilities with the Secretary. But I can tell you, having heard what he talked about and thinking through the digital material management, this is where we're headed. So I will touch on that a little bit more in a second. So you can see that, you know, from the time I got back, it has been a full sprint. Because of the air show. That was day 2 on the job. Colonel Sebrin and the community did an incredible job. It was a fantastic air show. It was actually the last thing I went to in 2019 before I left. Coming back, even better, Colonel Sebrin. So very well done. And then full sprint to now with Tinker and the Primes. And this is a great event in itself. In fact, I recall attending Tinker and the Primes in 2018. And listening to then the commander, Brigadier General Chris Hill, discussing many of the topics we've discussed over the last couple days. And I can recall thinking to myself, the industrial base is really the strategic and comparative advantage that we have over our adversaries. Literally thousands of military and civilian airmen that span across the Oklahoma logistics air logistics complex, the 10,000, but more broadly, the thousands of civilian and airmen, military airmen that span across industry. That is the comparative advantage that we have, and it's why we're gonna win the next fight. As previous leaders alluded to, we have the tools, we have the will, we've got the commitment, we need to improve the partnership and get after production. With one caution, right? The Secretary alluded to it, and that is that China is focused on manufacturing, right? They're building their industrial capability and they're investing in those technologies as well. And so as we move forward, our comparative advantage is diminishing. And so what I thought I'd do today is further connect the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex team to that threat, and then continue to make the case that the critical imperative here is the need to amplify our warfighting culture across the entire defense industrial base together as an integrated team. And then I'll build on some of the comments other leaders brought forward and briefed over the last couple days, and then bring in our depot's perspective. So I'm learning a lot about our fantastic team of professionals and how we produce combat-ready aircraft as our mission, or combat-ready air power as our mission, and also as the Department of Defense's largest maintenance, repair, and overhaul facility. Some would argue largest MRO on the planet, but regardless of if it is or isn't, what I can tell you is we bring massive capability and capacity to the warfighter. And as Colonel Rashetta rightly pointed out yesterday, we bring great economic and aerospace capability to the great state of Oklahoma. And I'm sure proud to join this team, the broader team. So it's great to be here. So we know the Sustainment Federation spans across the entire force of the audience here, but without the members of the Oklahoma State Legislature, local officials, business leaders, our Sustainment Federation achieves little to nothing. So I did want to thank Senator Stanley for being here, Ma'am, thank you for being here and thank you for supporting us, and other members and representatives that might be in the audience. Really appreciate the support that you give to our complex. Tinker Air Force Base has indeed had an incredible and tremendous partnership for over 80 years that I think Mayor Dukes pointed out yesterday. And from the land acquisition in 1941 to the GM Motors plant in 2008 and to the 156-acre Burlington Northern Santa Fe rail in 2015, incredible achievement there. Tinker stands out as an incredible partnership and example. Because it is true, as General Kirkland, one of my mentors, used to say, that the best communities do make the best bases. It's absolutely true, and that partnership and integration are key to winning the next fight. So as OCALC onboards the KC-46, the B-21 Raider, our depot's workload increases, and so do the opportunities to continue to invest in our partnerships. So I'm very proud of the work that our OCALC team is doing within those partnerships, and I think the following video highlights who we currently are as a logistics complex. So take a look, if we can move forward.
The mission of the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex at Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma, is to produce combat-ready air power. Its vision? An innovative team of maintenance professionals, safely producing high-quality, cost-effective, and timely combat-ready air power to win America's wars now and in the future. The Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex is one of 3 depots and 2 supply chain wings in the Air Force Sustainment Center. OCALC is one of the largest units in the Air Force Material Command, comprised of more than 10,500 military and civilian personnel with 98 different job skills, including more than 1,500 sustaining and software engineers. The complex utilizes 65 buildings and 8.4 million square feet of industrial floor space in support of its mission. The complex is a full-service maintenance, manufacturing, modification, repair, and overhaul center of excellence. It's the largest single-site employer in the state of Oklahoma, generating $3.8 billion annually, the equivalent to a commercial Fortune 1000 company. It's comprised of 5 groups that team together to provide world-class maintenance, repair, and overhaul support to the warfighter. The complex has implemented an art of the possible culture, focusing on the theory of constraints production methodology, utilizing continuous process improvement to improve safety, speed, quality, and cost effectiveness. The complex is committed to maintaining the highest standards and certifications in today's aerospace industry, with ISO 9110 and AS 50001 certifications. Prioritizing product and personnel safety objectives result in high-quality products and a safe working environment without fear of reprisal. These efforts ensure the warfighter's needs are met safely and on time.
All right. So that gives you a quick touch on who we are currently. It really is incredible capability and capacity. We cut that off because there's a longer version of that if you're interested, but it really captures a lot of who we are. And then, moving forward, as we look to the future, our goal is to develop an OCALC 2050 strategy and lay out how we can better collaborate with current and future partners to meet the warfighter changing requirements. Admittedly, this is like building a plane while it's flying, since technology and requirements are changing so quickly, and our pacing threat is also changing because we know the People's Republic of China certainly gets a vote in this context. Skip past that. So from that lens, our mission becomes even more critical to the fight in terms of getting back to sustainment. The fight to posture and integrate for the fight to get to the fight to execute air power during the fight, and the fight to stay in the fight and then ultimately win requires sustainment and combat-ready air power that the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex produces. This requires and demands us to set tough priorities early, accelerating sustainment in the right areas, surging the right material, as we've talked about over the last couple days, and exercising the right capabilities at the point of need, and projecting air power on time. That's the critical imperative to amplify warfighting culture. General Eisenhower rightfully said, "You'll not find it difficult to prove that battles, campaigns, and even wars have been won or lost because of logistics." And his wisdom reinforces our national defense strategy, our Air Force strategic intent to accelerate change or lose by General Brown, and our Air Force Materiel Command strategic plan to clearly demonstrate as a top priority to integrate capability delivery, as General Richardson said. The Air Force Sustainment Center's P4 priorities directly align: driving produce to promise, people make it happen, process is how we do it, and prepare for the future. They all become critical. We must make strides together to effectively project our nation's warfighting materiel, since there's no time for antiquated serial processes, inadequate teaming, or life cycle and functional stovepipes, as you may have heard General Richardson state yesterday. Bottom line, our collective advances in material capabilities and technology, along with partnering for effect, are critical in every aspect to delivering integrated capabilities in order to deter aggression and, if deterrence fails, to ultimately prevail in conflict. So now let me transition to the current state of Oklahoma City ALC. What you see here directly affects the overall sustainment activities. This chart captures our people and production numbers. We've maintained our pace of production in fiscal year 22 and in 23, despite the volatile economy that we live in, along with the constantly changing global events. I'm proud of the determination of the complex to continue to produce to our customers' requirements while meeting or exceeding quality and safety standards. Our speed, quality, and safety are the pillars of our art of the possible methodology mentioned in the video for producing to promise in particular. Due to AOP, we've unlocked significant achievements in producing 221 aircraft for programmed and unscheduled depot maintenance, on top of sustaining the life cycle for 307 engines and nearly 53,000 parts. But as I said before, we're now beginning to look forward towards the ALC of 2050. This involves projecting future workloads, connecting to academic and education partners, and to digitally develop and transform our workforce. Additionally, we need to invest more in our innovation ecosystem, focusing on the modernization of the complex's equipment, processes, and infrastructure, while finding ways to digitally advance, which we'll discuss further here in a minute. But the pacing thread, as you heard from the Secretary described yesterday, demands we continue to produce to promise with the changing environment simultaneously while focusing on cost-effective readiness to sustain production for readiness tomorrow. This complicates priorities and decision-making, but the tipping point we reached, the strategic shift, is that the pacing threat requires us to be agile, resilient, and prepared for conflict much sooner than previously expected. Therefore, innovation efforts need to advance significantly now, requiring collective commitment and investment towards meaningful change now, or potentially lose. So in the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex, our innovation ecosystem has achieved solid successes to date. Our 4 centers of innovation are React, Impact, Proact, and our Maintenance Support Group Lab, which I failed to introduce. Mr. Paul Victorian runs our Maintenance Support Group Lab and is doing amazing work. What you see here are examples of what each center has already contributed. As an example, reverse engineering and critical tooling, or REACT, got its start from using 3D scanning and inspection to solve maintenance and supply issues. Poor drawing or quality drove the need to 3D scan parts to supplement missing or unreliable dimensions, and legacy tooling that was worn or had no data, also called for reverse engineering, REACT. Coupled with the other centers of innovation, they're now paving the way for better and faster engineering tools and solutions. This team of 75 engineers across the innovation cells significantly reduced maintenance costs and improved material availability. And I've certainly seen similar capabilities as I've walked the halls. I think there's great opportunity for some partnering with our REACT cell and some of our others. So continue to look for those opportunities where we can make each other better together. Additionally, going to the next slide, our complex has built an organic advanced manufacturing capability over the last 8 years. In 2020, a significant milestone was achieved when a 3D metal printed part, anti-ice gasket, produced by the REACT lab was certified airworthy and is now flying on an aircraft today. The airworthiness certification process took the informed but acceptable risk and solved the problem. This anti-ice gasket, a non-complex part, was reverse engineered, additive manufacturing designed, prototyped, and additive manufacturing produced in 9 months. With the technical data package complete and an airworthiness certificate, it can be produced organically by us or industry within weeks. Again, I've seen great examples of the opportunity that's out there for advanced manufacturing, and we need to continue to build on those things. Just as another example, we've done some great work on the polymer side in the B1 community, producing 200 parts that are now flying on aircraft, and with an annual cost avoidance of $1.3 million. But the threat demands accelerated processes of certification for metal parts. So to enhance the greater Air Force supply chain, the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex, in cooperation with others, intend to integrate through an advanced manufacturing alliance with the collective goal of bringing 24 parts to airworthiness certification in 2024. The intent is to accelerate and produce the data necessary and certify the processes to bring 24 parts as airworthy into 2024. Bottom line, we collectively owe it to the warfighter to continue to focus on and advance this goal as a top priority. We need to be able to support the capability and capacity of contracted logistics support, depot, and field-level repair sites to additively produce their requirements before it's too late, as the Secretary suggested. In addition to additive manufacturing, the OCALC of 2050 requires concurrently executed digital strategy. We already have made great strides in programs, and teams are beginning to realize digital capability into our equipment and industrial process controls. And to help accelerate our digital depot campaign further, it'll become a central part of our OCALC 2050 area development plan and business strategy. Just as advanced manufacturing is an inherently data-centric discipline, our digital depot campaign will focus on trusted information systems that connect data packages and leverage pools of data towards digitalizing art of the possible methodologies as well. Today, we operate as one complex and center through manual data integration and convening work groups. But in 2050, the digital depot and digital fabric should produce metrics, identify process failures, and produce digital twins of the industrial floors, revealing the most efficient and effective air logistics complex enterprise solutions. So optimized by digital equipment and a digitally competent workforce, this digital fabric will become the backbone for depot integration within the OCALC of 2050 plan. Really, all of what we've discussed just over the last 10 minutes is closely aligned to Industry 4.0 modernization. And our intent for the complex is to adapt the reality of increased automation, big data, smart interconnected machines, and greater productivity. We need to work together to find appropriate opportunities and mechanisms to share data and collectively transform to Industry 4.0 expectations, as you see here. Another important pillar of the business strategy for OCALC is found in our collaboration with academia. These examples highlight our efforts to contribute to furthering STEM outreach efforts by giving students access to cutting-edge research tools, and I'm especially interested in the outcomes that the prototype contracts with OU and OSU will produce. So true success is particularly a shared success, and it lies in our partnerships. Where the complex can't support the warfighter, our partners will be the responsible agent, and vice versa. Together, we will soon find ourselves measuring success in time rather than cost effectiveness. You can see by the slide that we have many, many partners, and the production capability and capacity can be enhanced through the collective efforts to share best practices and look for mutually beneficial opportunities. So as we move forward towards the OCALC of 2050, recommend we continue to commit to strengthening efforts between government, industry, and academia. The pace of change is accelerating, and we must also. How we shape our partnerships will make all the difference. Rooted in transparency, accountability, and compromise, great accomplishments can be achieved across the Sustainment Federation. The OCALC will continue to focus and advance our relationships with community and industry partners on a daily basis, from the state's aerospace, career tech, and education, to the maintenance alliances and training programs, to the annual Oklahoma Aerospace Summit, and Tinker and the Primes as key examples. The partnerships that the Air Force enjoys from the state of Oklahoma will continue to be a pillar of what we focus on, because it is true, the best communities make the best bases. So I want to thank you all again for the opportunity to be here today. Thank you for your dedication and collection to our beneficial mutual success across the industrial base, and I look forward to working with you all in the year ahead, and with 4 minutes left to answer a couple questions as well. So thank you.
Okay, if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand. We have microphones for you. While you're mulling that over, sir, we've got a couple on the app for you.
Okay.
So the first one is, with your previous experience on tinkering within AFMC, what challenges are you most excited to tackle as the ALC commander?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, over the last 4 years, I've come to understand the digital integration aspects of what needs to happen. General Richardson, his message on digital material management comes as basically a critical imperative. I mean, and you can see that across the enterprise, right? Without the tools to integrate and deconflict some of the threats from a cyber perspective, if we don't get after digital integration now across the supply chain, leading to potential artificial intelligence and machine learning activities, we may not catch up, right? So that opportunity exists for us now before it's too late. That to me is what needs to happen. We in the Sustainment Center have an awesome methodology for art of the possible that can also be digitalized and improved. We've seen some of the silver lining and benefit of that coming out of COVID, that there is a way to digitally integrate, and that extends beyond our fence line and to our industry partners. There's really an opportunity here, but we do have to get after the data sharing and the data pooling and the data integration and break down some of those barriers that exist in order to get to being able to support those fights. So that's what excites me. I think it's a huge opportunity. I was really excited, when I came in 45 days ago and saw what the team was already doing to that end, to start bringing machines together, bringing that data together, understanding how we can manage it better and create opportunities. So I think that's what's really changed from manual to data, and we just need to get after it. Great question. Thanks.
All right, sir, we've got one more on the app. I think this will probably take us to time. Okay. Thinking of the tumultuous start of the F-135 line and now its recent successes, what are the lessons learned from partnering with industry on a new product or project?
Yeah, I think, within the legacy fleets, we've also got to think about how we manage and make them digital. So there's great capability. Some of you brought it in, and looking at, the legacy fleets and how we understand and manage them specifically, because they're a huge part of our operational plans, right? As you know, the tanker specifically with what, the timing that it's going to require to get to the next tanker, we've got to be able to project the combat capability that we have. We go to war with the capability that exists. And so the opportunity to continue to digitalize the legacy fleets and then improve management and cost effectiveness for readiness tomorrow is huge. I was really impressed to see some of the capabilities that exist. Again, Tinker and the Primes and things like it, bring that to everybody's awareness, and then we can get after it together. But the legacy fleets, we need to keep working hard on, because that is the force that we have to go to war with. And maybe that is a 5-meter target, or to the Secretary's point, we can't predict it, but we got to be ready for it, and certainly the comparative advantage is decreasing. So legacy fleets and management and partnership is key. Great question. Well, all that to say, great to meet you all. Look forward to working with you. Thanks for this opportunity. It is great to be back in Oklahoma. My family and I were just super excited to get to come back for a third time. Doesn't happen, if ever. And we're just excited to work with you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colonel Moore. We are thankful for having you back in Oklahoma City and at Tinker Air Force Base. The next panel is an interesting one. With all the talk going on in the world about non-humans or extraterrestrials, let us hear from the experts on what space exploration looks like in Oklahoma. Moderating today's panel is Mr. Craig Smith, Executive Director of the Oklahoma Space Industry Development Authority. Joining him is Mr. Jim Bridenstine, former NASA administrator and former U.S. Congressman, Ms. Brenda Rolls, President and CEO of Frontier Electronic Systems of Stillwater, and Mr. Bailey Siegfried, Vice President of the NORDAM Group.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. And now for something completely different. I know we've talked aerospace and in Tinker, and we've been given the opportunity today, and we're really excited about this. This is the first time that Tinker and the Primes has done a panel or a segment on space. So consider yourselves very fortunate. This is the first, and hopefully maybe perhaps the inaugural space segment. And I'm going to do something unusual right now. If you would, take your cell phone out. This is something you don't hear at conferences very much, but take your cell phone out. If you know of a colleague or a friend, a coworker who's still out in the lobby, maybe checking out at the hotel, text them, invite them back in to hear this panel. This will be something pretty remarkable. I've got a distinguished panelists up here with us today that each one could probably provide a TED Talk on their own, but to collectively and together, wow, this is an incredible one. So thank you for being here. Again, my name's Craig Smith. I'm the executive director of a state agency called the Oklahoma Space Industry Development Authority. And we were established in 1999 by the Oklahoma legislature when only the United States and Russia were putting anything into space. And just a few years later, we operate the Oklahoma Air and Spaceport out at Burns Flat, Oklahoma. Now, some of you pilots may know it as Clinton Sherman Airport. You can see, raise the hands of anybody that's doing any touch and goes out there out of Altus or Vance. Got it. So we were a former World War II naval air station in the 1940s, and then later became a B-52 SAC base in the 1950s and 60s. And we maintained the fourth largest concrete civilian runway in North America and in Burns Flat, Oklahoma. And today, it's 15,503 feet long by 300 feet, to give you a perspective on how big that thing is. Today, we're one of 14 FAA licensed spaceports in the United States, and we were the number 6 in that order. And we were the very first one in a landlocked state. And we also maintain a space flight corridor, which is 150 miles long. It's about 45 miles wide that we control and operate from the surface of the Earth all the way into outer space. Being a landlocked state, we knew that we needed a pathway in and out of the spaceport to space. And it has a northwest or a polar trajectory, which is kind of our secret sauce. It's a little different than the other spaceports on the coasts that have a southern trajectory. Ours is a northwest and a polar trajectory in that direction. And it's not restricted airspace, nor does it interfere with military operations areas. So it's unique in that role. And associated with it, we have an 1,100-acre industrial park that we can develop and we can put businesses in that are adjacent to this incredibly long runway. And it has streets, infrastructure, it even has access to high-speed internet. So we're working on a number of things there to make that accessible for businesses that want to come and develop out there and be somewhere nearby. We also maintain a joint use agreement with the United States Air Force. We have pilots from Vance Air Force Base and Altus Air Force Base doing touch and goes out there every day. As of August 1st, our FBO acquired a contract with the DLA to provide fueling for our service members as well. So that's an incredible asset, and we want to encourage you to take advantage of that if you have the opportunity as well. And we also are a general use airport. So if you fly a Piper or a Cessna or a Bonanza, come and do some touch and goes or come and land at our airport, play a round of golf, come enjoy our restaurant there as well. But I'm excited about the panel that we have here with us this morning. I want to move as quickly as we can in that direction. Again, each one of these distinguished guests we're really fortunate to have them here. First, I'll briefly introduce each of you and give you the opportunity to share with the audience a little bit about your company and what your current involvement in space is. Dr. Brenda Rolls, she's the president and CEO of Frontier Electronic Systems in Stillwater, Oklahoma. She's a graduate of Oklahoma State University with a degree in organizational administration, who began her career in the California offices of FES, where she mastered government cost accounting and contract administration, all while completing her doctorate in psychology. She and FES focus on strategic technology advancement and product diversity in the aerospace and defense tech marketplace. And she volunteers on numerous local boards, service organizations, and commissions, and is currently the chair of the Oklahoma Space Development Authority, so she's my top boss right now. Beside her is Bailey J. Siegfried. He's the VP at NORDAM in Tulsa. He's a graduate of Notre Dame with both a bachelor's and master's degree and serves on the advisory council for the university's Mendoza College of Business. He's a member of the U.S. Geospatial Intelligence Foundation, the Space Foundation, and is involved in several nonprofit boards and commissions in multiple aerospace, space, and STEM development initiatives across the country. Bailey is an instrument-rated pilot and a certified diver. So he can go to great depths in the ocean, fly to great heights, and he and his family's aerospace business has its sights set even higher, and you can hear a little bit about that in just a moment. And down in the end, we're incredibly blessed to have former NASA administrator Jim Bridenstine. He's a graduate of Rice University, triple major with business, economics, and psychology, and an MBA from Cornell. He was a U.S. naval pilot with 1,900 hours and 333 landings on aircraft carriers. Guy's smart. Let me tell you why he's smart. And one of the things that kind of gives you an indicator of this, what was your call sign in the Navy?
Brainstem.
He's right here in front of us, folks. This is exciting. Of course, he's also a former U.S. Congressman in Oklahoma's 1st District, and he also served on the HASC, the House Armed Services Committee, and of course was the NASA administrator for the last few years and reestablished the mission of human spaceflight, and he lives right here in Oklahoma. All right, so thank you very much for being here. Dr. Rolls, let's begin with you. Tell us about Frontier and your history there and involvement in space and how that came about.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for the introduction and all the great words, and thank you all for being here today. Space in Oklahoma is really exciting, and I think there is a tremendous amount of opportunity for the space industry here. So Frontier actually is a small business. My parents founded it, so I'm a second generation. My dad was an electrical engineering professor at Oklahoma State. My mom worked in the biochemistry department at Oklahoma State. And they were distressed at seeing all the graduates leave the state each year. There would be graduation, and then the students would be off to the East Coast or the West Coast or maybe even Texas. So, can you hear me? Okay. So anyway, that was kind of the foundation of the business. Started really serving military and defense, and in 1990, they made a strategic decision to enter the space industry. There were two things that really helped us do that. One was we established a mentor-protege agreement with what was then TRW, which is now Northrop Grumman, and they helped us. We had an engineering and a manufacturing facility already in Stillwater. So TRW, now Northrop Grumman, helped us develop our space flight electronic building capabilities. So we're primarily an electronics company, so they helped us develop those processes that would allow us to build robust spaceflight hardware. And then the second thing was a significant investment that my parents decided to make in the facility to create the environment where, is this better?
Yeah, I think that's
to create the environment where space flight hardware could be built, to invest in test equipment and different types of technologies that would allow us to actually build robust hardware. Another thing that happened is we had a second mentor-protege agreement where TRW, then Northrop Grumman by that time, helped us develop the capabilities to buy high reliability parts that could be put on spaceflight hardware. So along with space, Frontier, we have a long legacy of supporting the military. We're on many platforms. We support the F-18, the Super Hornet, the Growler. We support the Global Hawk and Triton unmanned systems. We provide hardware for several missile systems. And one of our big customers is the Navy, where we provide some shipboard systems that take radar and video data and process and redistribute it throughout the ship. So we have a really broad base, but space is one of our, it's challenging, it's rewarding. We've had product on the International Space Station. Our first product went up in 1998, and since that time we have had multiple different types of electronic equipment that has flown to the space station. We have hardware on satellites, and most recently we were on the Artemis mission working with prime contractors like Collins and Boeing and Lockheed. So it's very exciting. That's probably a longer introduction than you were hoping for, but.
Fantastic, all from Stillwater, Oklahoma. That's fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Rolls, appreciate it. Bailey, NORDAM is a family company that since its founding has continued to adapt to the world around it. Long history in aerospace, continues to grow from its origins in Tulsa, and now you have locations all over the world. Tell us what you can about what NORDAM has done and what you guys are seeking to do in the realm of space.
Sure. I think my mic works, so I'll just set that there. I'm Bailey Siegfried. I always like to start and explain that I'm the youngest of 6 in a second-generation family business, aerospace company out of Tulsa called NORDAM, and we're in the business of building bonds that last, whether it be bonds with our partners, customers, suppliers, people on stage, or things that fly. We do composite bond and metal bond, and believe it or not, I know you will, all those things that we bond and glue together not only happen around Oklahoma, but they have to go up in the air, and why not go to the next atmosphere or lack thereof, which is space. So we've taken our 54 years of expertise in building bonds that last, and had, with the significant demand in the open market that Administrator Bridenstine led with the space renaissance, we've participated in that in the satellite panel manufacturing business, and have some things going to space this year on a couple different pathways. And being a part of Oklahoma and this country is a blessing. We couldn't do it anywhere else, and thanks to you, we're safe and sound at home, but we want to support you more, whether it be in this atmosphere or in space. We've got lots of customers here in the room. Most importantly, you hear from Tinker and our warfighter supports. We support the F-18, repairing and bonding that, the A-10, B-52, B-2, and also as well as unmanned aerial systems, and like I said, satellites. And if you've flown on an airplane, guarantee you've flown on our stuff made right here. We'd like to work with more of you, so reach out anytime, and we'll work together. Did I cover everything?
Nicely done.
Okay, thank you.
Jim is Congressman for Tulsa, 1st District, Oklahoma. You breathed new life into NASA with the Artemis plan. And then later as NASA Administrator, you resurrected its mission of American human spaceflight following the shuttle's retirement in 2011. And you created the Artemis program to establish the first permanent presence on the moon. So what have you done lately?
Thank you, Craig. What have I done lately? I'm an independent consultant. So I mostly support companies that might have traditionally done more aviation activity, help them kind of explore their opportunities in space. I do advising for an Oklahoma company called Acorn Growth Companies, private equity firm that invests in aerospace and defense. And I consult with some of the companies that are here on stage, Frontier Electronic Systems and NORDAM, two great Oklahoma companies that are continuing to increase Oklahoma's capability to participate in the space industry. So yeah, I'm an independent consultant, and I love it. I get to work on projects that I'm excited about, and things that I'm not, I get to push aside. So it's good.
Tell us a little bit about the Artemis program, and when you were in Congress, what drew your interest to space, being from Oklahoma? Yeah.
So I'm a Navy pilot by trade. My whole life, I grew up wanting to fly, and I was always an enthusiast with aviation. I get to Congress, I'm on the Armed Services Committee, Strategic Forces Subcommittee, which deals with all of our national security space capabilities. I also was on the Science Committee, which oversees NASA, and I chaired, on the Science Committee, there's a subcommittee on the environment. I chaired that subcommittee, which oversees NOAA, and about 40% of NOAA's budget is space-related activities. So I'm on the Science Committee, I'm on the Armed Services Committee. All the activities I'm dealing with are space-related, and it so happens that, believe it or not, members of Congress are not necessarily Navy pilots by trade. They're all lawyers, and they spend a lot of time talking about law things, and it really just kind of fit with me that I could make a big impact on space activities. I drafted, on all the committees I was on, the subcommittees, they were all dealing with the same issues for the nation, but they were all overseeing agencies that are trying to solve these problems independently and uniquely rather than collectively. And so I drafted a very comprehensive space reform bill called the American Space Renaissance Act, and it tried to say, look, whether you're national security, commercial, civil, space, we have to be able to solve these problems together rather than having stovepipe solutions without any kind of integration. So I drafted that bill, and the next thing you know, I'm getting all kinds of calls from industry and others to advise on, what they need to be doing to prepare for the future of space. And long story short, when President Trump got elected, he asked me to serve as his NASA administrator, and I was happy to do that.
And look where we are now. It's remarkable how far NASA's come in the last 5 or 6
years. You asked about the Artemis program. The key is we were building, and Brenda is a big part of the SLS rocket, which is going to take our astronauts to space historically. But we had no mission to go to the moon. In fact, we didn't know where we were going. We were building hardware without a mission. And so one of the first things that President Trump did is he created Space Policy Directive 1 that said we are going to the moon. We're going with commercial partners, which was a change. Mm-hmm. We're going with international partners, which we've never done before as far as the moon goes. And we're going to go to stay. We're going to go sustainably. And so we put together a program to achieve those ends. That program is the Artemis program. It uses legacy systems like the SLS rocket, the Orion crew capsule, the European service module, again, international partners. And we're building a space station in orbit around the moon called the Gateway. And then we're going to have a commercial human landing system that can take our astronauts back and forth to the surface of the moon and back to the Gateway and back and forth. So we're building the infrastructure for a sustainable presence on the moon with humans. And by the way, we're doing it with a purpose, and the purpose is ultimately for humans to go to Mars. And so there's a lot of opportunity in that. And Oklahoma's companies are actively involved in that at some level already. And my goal is to help them do even more.
Fantastic. And that's a good point. We only have a couple of companies here on stage that are involved in this, but I know there's a lot of other companies out there that are doing that. Please reach out to me afterward. I'd like to visit with you about those, what you're doing and connect you with the folks up here as well. So we know Oklahoma is the leader in MRO. We are the MRO capital of the world. We have the FAA, Mike Monroe Aeronautical Center just down the street here in Oklahoma City, the largest contingent of DOT employees outside of Washington, D.C. And that's National Registry is located there. All the air traffic controllers are trained there at some point in their career. Also has CAMI, the Civil Aeronautical Medical Institute is located in Mike Monroney. The National Weather Center in Norman, Oklahoma. We have several major research universities, regional colleges with engineering programs, a premier career tech system right here in Oklahoma. And we've learned a little bit about what's currently taking place, at least in your companies here in the state. But what is space in Oklahoma? And, the title of this session is Space in Oklahoma. Seriously? And I expect to change that punctuation at the end of this. But what is possible in Oklahoma and why? Dr. Rolls?
Well, so Oklahoma, back to the mic. Oklahoma has a really great environment for doing business. First of all, it's a business-friendly state. We have found Oklahoma, aside from the structure and the focus, people here in Oklahoma are hardworking. We have been able to retain a lot of graduates from Oklahoma State because we're in Stillwater. Fewer from OU migrate north to Stillwater, but we have had a few of those. There's a really solid work ethic. We have a lot of breadth in terms of support within our state. Our legislators are very supportive, both on the state level and on the national level. They are real advocates for supporting military and space. And as space becomes, space has been not as militarily focused in the past as I believe it will become in the future. So I think Oklahoma is really poised well. Our career tech system is another real benefit to Oklahoma in terms of training people, helping them further their education, which may not be in a 4-year program, but giving them really solid skills. And Oklahoma is a great place to live for people. So that's one of the things that our workforce is very committed. We have long tenured employees, and they're committed to Oklahoma for many reasons. And so we see a continued focus on the state to develop aerospace. And when they say aerospace, we're hearing the space as well as the aero. And I think there's a big commitment. So those are good things.
Bailey, what do you see from your perspective on that?
Well, first, there's so much potential. I always like to say there's a lot of space in Oklahoma, and there's room for more. We have this industrial backbone here for MRO, manufacturing, and aerospace. I heard it earlier, and I agree. Greatest MRO for the greatest military and country on earth is right here. The next biggest commercial MRO is also here. So we have the industrial base and infrastructure to just elevate it to the next level. The market and the opportunity it's unending, I'd say, with space. And while the MRO side of space is not significant at this point, it will be, and as well as the manufacturing opportunities as time goes by. So if you're in aerospace, you can't get to space without aerospace. And so there's lots of opportunity to find ways and paths to engage in that whole new market. I opened up earlier a little bit about me. One more thing about me, my greatest skill is surrounding myself with people that I trust and people that are smarter than me. And I am happy. My strategic plan for Oklahoma has been recruiting these people because with Dr. Roll's background and Craig's and what Congressman Bridenstine can do, I think they will take us and lead us and guide us to the next level. What I saw with
Call me Jim.
Jim, okay, I'm having a hard time. Thank you. What I saw, what Jim did, and he so nicely invited me to give feedback on the Artemis plan, or the Space Renaissance, American Space Renaissance Act, 7 or 8 years ago, maybe. So I can say
You were there when?
I'm there. A little bit of an author, sort of, an editor, maybe. And what I saw he could do there, why not have the Oklahoma Space Renaissance vision and effort? So he's engaged with the great state of Oklahoma and our space plan, and there's lots more he can tell you. And Dr. Rolls is our new chair of the Space Industry Authority. I want to hear from these people I recruited. So take it from here.
Okay. So Brenda mentioned how the future of space is going to have more national security elements. That's absolutely true. We look at what's happening. A lot of people don't realize how dependent we are on space, the way we communicate. People are familiar with DirecTV, Dish Network, internet broadband from space. Of course, if you're flying on an airplane and you're on the internet on the airplane, that's all space SATCOM. But the way we communicate, the way we navigate, the way we produce food, produce energy, do disaster relief, national security, defense, predict weather, understand climate, all of these things are dependent on space. A lot of people don't realize how critical space is to our infrastructure on the Earth. When we think about the power grid regulates flows of electricity based on a timing signal that comes from the GPS constellation. So we lose GPS, we lose the power grid. When we think about data flows of data on terrestrial wireless networks, your cell phone network, if we lose, again, those data flows are dependent on a timing signal from GPS. We lose that timing signal, we lose wireless networks, and lots of other networks as well, terrestrial networks. And then we think about, there's so many, banking, for example. Every banking transaction is dependent on a timing signal from GPS. We lose the timing signal from GPS, we lose banking. So our infrastructure is dependent on space in ways most Americans don't realize, and we don't realize how much we're using space day in and day out. What does that mean? We heard earlier about the pacing threat, which of course is China, and of course we see what Russia is doing. They are both launching direct ascent anti-satellite missiles to destroy our space infrastructure if they so desire. But it's more than that. It's also how they do co-orbital anti-satellite capabilities and then proliferating technologies that are less expensive, like spoofing and jamming and dazzling, which is using laser energy to disrupt our satellites. All of these technologies we have to build resiliency into our architectures in space for our existence. People need to understand a day without space in the United States of America our country ceases to exist as we know it. Imagine a country without a power grid, without wireless networks, without banking. I mean, no milk in the grocery store in a matter of days. Our country, so here's the thing. They're not only building and proliferating these technologies to keep us from using space, but they're also building their own infrastructure in space. Remember, the GPS signal is available to the entire world, and it's available for free. Anybody can use it. So why would you build your own GPS constellation? Or as China calls theirs, Beidou, and Russia calls their GLONASS. So all of these are technologies that they are developing so that they could destroy our technologies and use their own technologies. And so we have to think about, as America, how do we build resiliency? So when I was on the Armed Services Committee, General Hyten would come in and General Shelton, and they would tell us, we need to proliferate our architectures in space. Instead of building, and this is where contractors have great opportunity when it comes to the space industry. Instead of building massive Battlestar Galactica satellites where you integrate all of the sensors onto one massive satellite and you launch something the size of a school bus into geostationary orbit and it's going to be there for the next 30 years. That's what General Hyten at the time told us on the Armed Services Committee. He's like, that's a big, juicy target, and it's an easy target. We have to complicate the targeting solution for the enemy. We have to proliferate. We need thousands of satellites in low Earth orbit rather than one big satellite in geostationary orbit. And those satellites need to constantly be going over the horizon, which is why you want low Earth orbit. Now they can start shooting down satellites. They're shooting down one satellite in a network of thousands. All of a sudden, we have resiliency. Now, that creates a space debris problem, which is another challenge that we're going to have to address in the coming years. But the point is building resiliency by bringing these satellites into low Earth orbit and having thousands of them. It creates opportunity for frontier electronic systems. It creates opportunity for NORDAM. I remember Bailey and I were at the Space Symposium back in April in Colorado Springs, and we put together a dinner and invited a bunch of industry executives. And Bailey stood up and he said, because this is the space industry, he said, how many people in this room can build thousands of something? And everybody's like looking around. Nobody in that room could build thousands of anything, because space historically has been very exquisite, high-end, very expensive capabilities. And Bailey's like, well, space is changing, and we at NORDAM can build thousands of things, mass production, which is, and that's what's going to happen. So when we go to low Earth orbit, we're talking about satellites that have a design life of 5 years. And then they re-enter, or they burn up in the atmosphere, and then they're reconstituted. This enables us to have a continuous pipeline that injects new technologies into these constellations, constantly injecting new technologies. Think of it like your cell phone. Every few years, you got to get a new cell phone because there's all these new capabilities in your cell phone. Well, we've been flying with the same satellites that were launched 30 years ago. and the satellites that we're using have 20 gigabits of throughput, when new technology would say we need multiple terabits of throughput per satellite. So the key is constellations are going into low Earth orbit. They're going to be regenerated, reconstituted. That means new technology. So the opportunity space is, for a company like Frontier Electronic Systems, we need to build new technologies that can be inserted into new satellites. When we think about NORDAM, how do we build thousands of panels that can be placed on these satellites? So there's lots of opportunity. In Oklahoma, Brenda identified, and so did Bailey. Oklahoma is unique in the sense that we have manufacturing capability, cost of living. We have the ability to produce in volume things that in other states it would be more challenging just because of the cost. So I do think that and so that's just on the national security side of things. When it comes to the civil space, weather, exploration, and then the commercial side, where people are familiar with Starlink, which is SpaceX's new constellation. That's one of many constellations, each of which will have hundreds, if not thousands, of satellites. There's lots of opportunity that is coming. Oklahoma needs to be prepared to take advantage of the coming opportunity. And I think we have a lot of capability here that could be leveraged to earn that industry here. And I'm happy to be supportive of that effort.
Well, fantastic. Kind of dovetails into the next question. And that's why we're all here, is about Tinker Air Force Base and what's possible there. So what is a possible mission for space at Tinker or Oklahoma in general? And I'll just lay that out, and anybody wants to grab a hold of it.
I haven't thought. Here's what I need to do probably. I need to think about and spend time with folks at Tinker and get their perspectives and their understanding. Look, I'm a Tulsa guy, so I can tell you more about what the Tulsa and the 1st District of Oklahoma could do, but I'd like to spend some time maybe thinking of what Tinker might be able to provide.
This is a remarkable conference, and you've got some of the leaders in this room that I'm sure will grab a hold of your sleeve on the way out of here. So we'll have to do that. Do you guys want to take a stab at that and see what any ideas or suggestions on what we might be able to do with an incredible asset like Tinker Air Force Base, and then how we might be able to utilize that in the space plan for the state of Oklahoma?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how it all works inside the military machine that protects all of us, but I imagine the skill sets that are right here and the existing channels of supply chain and materials and workforce bode well for machines and things that go to outer space, because you're taking care of them that stay mostly in this atmosphere for decades and fly, our warfighters support people safely. So I somehow, question is for leadership here to think about how can we get that coming here to Tinker and Oklahoma. Those repairs, MROs, refurbishments for space stuff.
Dr. Rolls, you want to take a stab?
Yeah. Okay.
There we go.
Oh, now I'm on. So I just think there's going to be a decreasing window between aeronautics and space, and that there will become more of an integration of space flight capabilities within aeronautics. And I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I think Tinker is exceptionally well poised to be able to lead in any of those kinds of transitions that come along. As you said, smart people, workforce, you've got the infrastructure, the knowledge base, skill sets, and I think that Tinker could really be a leader in that way.
Absolutely. Well, how about obstacles? Current obstacles in place that prevent Oklahoma and Tinker from being a major contributor? Is there anything that we need to get our policymakers looking at to say, here but for?
Okay, I admire how much you all are able to accomplish given the painful procurement process that we all must live with. And I think that is one of the things that our lawmakers and our leaders need to really understand, how we can more rapidly deploy technologies, how we can streamline some of the processes that understand why they're in place. We understand and we know we want to do the best we can for the taxpayer, and we want to make sure that we are providing good value, but we bring ourselves, we create such a slow ability to move. So I think, there was a little bit of discussion earlier this week about OTAs and other types of procurement opportunities, and I think those are important for our industry.
Hear from you.
I think everything Brenda said is accurate. The government is terrible at buying things, and I say that knowing a lot of those people are in this room. For example, when a procurement is promised, hey, we're going to do a solicitation on this date, and then it doesn't come. And then the solicitation comes on December 15th, and you have a month to respond, which means you give up Christmas and New Year's in order to respond to a government solicitation. These are huge problems. The government employees get to go on vacation while everybody who's doing the work to ultimately provide the capability.
And then it's not funded.
Yeah, and then it's,
So
yeah.
then it was for nothing.
And then we have a government shutdown. Anyway, I won't get into the politics of all that. But I will tell you one thing that is of concern to me that I think we all need to be cognizant of. Some of you might be aware that U.S. Space Command was going to be headquartered. Basically, when I was the NASA administrator, we created this new military service called the U.S. Space Force. We created a new geographic combatant command called U.S. Space Command. And it existed back in the 80s. It went away, and we brought it back. I think it was perfectly necessary and appropriate. And we created a new procurement capability called the Space Development Agency, which is now under the Space Force itself. So the U.S. Space Command, there was a process that was done to determine where it should be. The determination was that it was going to be in Huntsville. And all of a sudden, it became extraordinarily political because certain people were saying it should be in Colorado Springs, others were saying in Huntsville. And you had a number of members of Congress and senators that claimed that Huntsville should never have U.S. Space Command because it's a pro-life state. I think that is an extraordinarily dangerous position to take. Obviously, it doesn't bode well for Oklahoma. And these type of political issues need to be absolutely separate from how we make basing decisions for new capability. Mm-hmm. That's a risk for Oklahoma. If that's a risk for, and by the way, the Biden administration has now said it's not going to be in Huntsville. Even though the process was right to put it in Huntsville, there were 2 reviews done by the Secretary of the Air Force that said that the process was right and the decision was right. And then for political reasons, they've moved it back to Colorado Springs. I think that's going to be a problem going forward for every state that is pro-life, and I think that is a disaster for our country. Won't talk about that anymore.
Well, Oklahoma has a rich history in aerospace. You go back to Clyde Cessna, the Braniff brothers, Phillips 66, Mr. Skelly, the Spartan School of Aeronautics, Wiley Post, even in space, Gordon Cooper, one of the first female astronauts, Shannon Lucid, right here from Oklahoma. The first Native American in space, John Harrington, good friend of ours here at this the table up here. And of course, General Tom Stafford. If you've not been out to Weatherford and seen his museum, take 45 minutes and head out west and take a look at that. What can Oklahoma do to continue this tradition, this aerospace tradition, this space tradition in the state. I'll just lay that out.
Well, I think there's so much opportunity in just communicating it, and letting people know that, like I said earlier, there is a lot of space in Oklahoma, and there's room for more. We do a lot of work in workforce and also STEM development, and telling those stories and getting out there is critical to the defense industrial base. It's critical to our country, our state, and the economic future of those kids and students. I know it. So one of my great astronaut friends, he always says, space and dinosaurs, it's like the easiest thing to inspire children with. And so I personally believe that kids can't view what they can't see. So we bring them an astronaut, and we bring them out to our company, and we let them see what they could be one day. I grew up in an aerospace company my whole life, and I think it was all the way to, it took me, I had to get to Notre Dame to understand what an engineer was. Lo and behold, I was surrounded by them all my life. So showing kids and telling these stories lets them see that they could be. It lets them believe that, oh, space is achievable, and I don't have to go to space. I could be a part of the process. So for companies here, and invite tours. The only challenge for the schools typically is that it's a bus ride. It's like $50, and they'll come out and see you. And just like them, they don't know how to reach out to you, and because everybody that's training our teachers have only been inside the school walls most of their life in their experience. And then same with businesses, they don't know how to reach out to the schools. So give it a shot at your alma mater and just say, hey, would you like to come out and see what we do? And that will change at least 5 people's lives in their trajectory. And that's what we're trying to do, just exposure to make a difference in trajectory. Tell them the stories about our history, first Native American in space. That will connect with a handful and make a difference in their lives. Or tell them about the first chairwoman of the Oklahoma Space Industrial Authority, and also first American Indian, which I'm proud to say and support you on. Or tell them about our very own, the head of NASA, right here, in Oklahoma, sending us back to the moon. The things that you did have opened up and paved ways for all the companies here. And you told a story once about, if the government designed the SpaceX rocket, it would have never had certain things. And because that commercial, the entrepreneurial aspect, they decided different amount of engines, different fuel system, all sorts of different stuff through that free market, free mind approach.
Yeah, I think that's right. So the innovation comes from profit motive, which means you've got to win market share. You have to compete on cost and innovation, and the government has opposite incentives. Members of Congress are all looking to protect jobs and industry in their districts, which means we're going to keep building what we built 10 years ago and 20 years ago and 30 years ago, because those systems are, so we have to figure out how to, that's why Brenda mentioned other transactional authorities, where it's really based on how do we inject commercial capability into what the government buys. So when we think about how the future of government procurement is going to be, especially as it relates to space, and hopefully it'll go into other things as well, the government used to purchase, own, and operate hardware. And that's where you get these programs where the government is buying things that are 30 years old that have absolutely, well, I wouldn't say no, but very limited innovation. Where instead of the government buying hardware, if the government buys a service, we're not going to write the requirements on how to build your rocket. We're just going to buy the rocket that you produce as long as it meets our needs. Mm-hmm. And then people produce things. So the idea is we're going to buy services instead of hardware. We're going to buy, in fact, the next step is we're going to buy data. So we're not even going to worry about the rocket. We're not going to worry about the satellite. You design the rocket, you design the satellite, you come up with all of the solutions. Here's the data that we want. We want to know how climate is changing. We want to know how the sea levels are rising. We want to know how carbon emissions are being put into the atmosphere. We need sensors to do those things. We want better and more weather data so we can be better at predicting weather. Here's the data that we want, who can provide it, and then let industry go come up with the solution sets without the central process of government procurement. Now, I will tell you, in the United States of America, and this can be unpopular for some people in this room, and I'm okay with that, I'm no longer in politics, so it doesn't matter anymore. We will never, as the United States of America, we will never be able to out-centrally plan China, because our systems of procurement and representation are so dispersed and disparate, and power is divided so broadly by intention that there are way too many interests to enable us to out-centrally plan China. I don't want to go into specific procurement programs. I'm happy to do that offline. But what we can do is we can out-entrepreneur China. We can out-innovate China. We can move at a faster pace than China because we have financial systems and incentives that are unlike anything that's ever existed in the history of humankind. And so the United States of America has great capability that we can tap into, and we need to do that. What does that mean? The way we procure things is going to be different, and ultimately the way manufacturers produce is going to be based on a whole different mindset. It's not about appeasing a government customer. It's about driving cost down and innovation up and providing more access for a lower cost and lower burdens than ever before. That's the idea.
Absolutely. So you've heard quite a bit today, and I thank you to each of our panelists for being here today, making the journey from your respective communities and joining us here today. We heard earlier this week the threat from China. When I said when we got our spaceport license, is only the United States and Russia that were putting anything into space. Now we have 17 countries that have space capabilities. It's a multi-billion-dollar economy that it's continuing to grow and expand. As Dr. Rolls said, the space between aerospace and space is narrowing. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. There's a lot of threat out there. There's a lot of things we need to focus on. And this just kind of lifted the tent just a little bit to peek underneath it. So I thank you for being here today. We appreciate your time, and thank you for each of you being here. And I certainly want to shout out to Erica Cook. Thanks. I want to make her type out. She's the one that's doing all the words underneath the screen. And I try to do this to her every year. Worcestershire, Reykjavik. See if I can put those up there. But thank you very much. Great job. Did she put it up there?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick 30-minute break. Look forward to seeing you soon for the final presentation by Lieutenant General Stacy Hawkins. Thank you.